Check it out, y'all.
You're listening to the realest. You're listening to the realest voice in progressive media. DJ Elf 7.
Hey, what's up, yo? It's your boy DJ Elf 7. Today I got a very special guest. Super happy to see him back on. It's been a while. I get my boy Alan Bell. Let him introduce himself. Go ahead. Tell him what's your story.
Yes, my name's Alan Bell. I do Trotsky or Bust. I talk about very different opinions. I'm obviously a leftist. I'm going to talk about a different topic today that I don't concur with what I call the fake far left, but we'll get into that later. I want to thank you very much for this, and I'll tell you why. Because if you watch all the others who I refer to as the fake far left, the Jimmy Dores, the Hill, whoever, they'll rip Israel to shreds, but they'll never, ever, ever bring anybody on with a contrary point of view, right? So my question is, why and what are they afraid of? And I'll get into that later, but I thank you, Ed, for at least giving me the opportunity. If you disagree, that's fine, but at least you're listening to a different point of view. I'm appreciative of that.
Yeah. Another thing that I think makes you valuable, like a little bit more about your perspective more valuable than just maybe a normal person is you've actually been in Israel. You're actually, you're Jewish yourself, and you've actually been there and seen what goes on, and that's worth a lot to me, because the fact of the matter is that, I do, turn into Jimmy Dore once in a while, I do turn into Cristobal once in a while, but the thing is that really, I know how much they get wrong on Korea. So I just basically, don't really pay that much attention when they talk about foreign affairs, because I just assume that they're getting everything wrong, just like they're getting everything wrong about Korea. So I can't wait to hear your perspective. What is, so recently I made some remarks about, I was challenging, there's something called BDS, and normally I don't like sanctions. I'm not like a pro-sanction guy. But, it is a nonviolent form of protest, and I said that, I challenged actually Yang's support for BDS, and I think that's what triggered. Do you feel like BDS is actually a bad thing for an anti-Israeli move?
Well, it's beyond that. What I believe, and I'll get into it later, is that this whole Israel thing is just a fraud, a conspiracy by people who I consider not to be leftists, but rather to be fifth columnists, people trying to sabotage the left. Now, to get to BDS, about a year ago or so, I did a video, I called it, Is BDS BS? Now, why do I call it BS? Why is BDS BS? Because one, you cannot sanction Israel. Now, as you know a lot more about computers than I do. So many of the companies, so many of the security software are made in Israel.
Okay,
right?
Wait a second. Let's just tell people before we get into this exactly what BDS is, because they might not know. BDS stands for the words boycott, divest, sanction. And the thing is that, right, you could boycott, divest, or sanction out of anything, but BDS, right, is actually been chosen to kind of be aimed at Israel specifically, right? Yeah. So the BDS movement, even though BDS sounds like it could be worked for anything, it's really kind of aimed at Israel specifically. And so far we agree on everything about what BDS is and stands for right now, right? Okay, just want to make sure that our viewers understand. Okay, so keep going on. Yeah.
Okay, so BDS targets Israel. Now it's funny because in Syria there was a genocide where the government, Bashar Assad, murdered, according to the UN, 400,000 people. No one's boycotting them, right? So first, you cannot boycott Israel because so many of the products we use in our day-to-day lives, you have to basically can't go online anymore. You can't use your iPad. You can't use your phone. So many of those have components or software that is made in Israel. Israel is second only to the United States as far as startups, computer startups. And so you can't really boycott Israel. So they've been called out. So they've taken the next step. They said, okay, well, we won't boycott Israel because we can't and we're wimpy. So we'll boycott products that are made on the West Bank in West Bank settlements.
Okay, I have some questions. I think that something you said earlier was Israel really invest mostly in cybersecurity products, or did you say they invest in just like all? Because when you said before that Israel has the most startups, are you saying that versus China? Wow, I think about like TikTok. I think about there's what? Okay, I just want to make sure. What are you saying?
No, I saw this a few years ago in 60 Minutes. Maybe it's changed, but they said next to the United States, Israel had the most startups. Now, is that still the case? I don't know. In any case, we can look it up. Even if it's third, you realize Israel's a country of like less than 10 million people.
Okay.
It does have so many companies. Are you like, for example, here, I'll give you the best example of how BDS is.
So what
Like,
I mean, but what products do they make that we use? Because I'm thinking
okay,
about like
I'm going to give you an example.
Kaspersky. I'm thinking
I'm
like
going to
that's
give you an
Russian.
example.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. Rashida Tlaib. She's of Palestinian descent, right? She's a big supporter of BDS, right? They went to her website. Guess who it's made by? Wix.
Oh,
Guess
okay.
where Wix is an Israeli company.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay,
Yeah,
interesting.
Wix is Waze. You know Waze when you
I do know Waze. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, that's an Israeli company. There are a lot of Israeli companies. You don't even know of them. And Rashida Tlaib is such a hypocrite that she, on one hand, she's for BDS and then she uses Wix. That's total BS, right? So what they've done is they've taken the next step and said, well, we're not going to boycott Israel, we'll boycott the settlement. Well, guess who works in the settlement? It's the Palestinians. They're the workers there. They pay taxes there. The settlements pay taxes to the Palestinian Authority, which on one hand will accept those taxes, on the other hand will support BDS.
Wait.
Right?
There's also so talking about Palestinians working for Israelis. That
Uh-huh.
seems kind of like it's a hot zone with people like blowing themselves up and stuff like that. So maybe there's a mistaken conception of how Palestinians and Israelis are separated. And are you saying that there's a lot more day-to-day interaction between Israelis and Palestinians
There is.
on a day-to-day?
There is.
Maybe there's just a misconception out there. So go ahead.
There's a huge misconception. A lot of it is, it started. Okay, first of all, can I give you a quick history lesson too?
Well, I think that's what I need. I think that's what I need because honestly,
Okay.
I don't trust the
All right.
information I get, so I want to hear what you have to say.
You shouldn't trust it. Okay, first of all, the word Palestinian. The word Palestinian is derived from Philistines, from the Bible. Philistine is a Hebrew word. It means invaders. So every time you hear Palestinian, it's invaders. The Jews never called it Palestine. The Arabs never called it Palestine. The Romans called it Palestine, and therefore the Europeans called it Palestine. The Arabs, in fact, in Arabic, there's no P sound. Okay, so in 1882, what happened is the Zionist movement began. Now, why did it begin in 1882? In 1882, there were a lot of pogroms in Russia, massacres of Jews in Russia. So a lot came to America, some stayed behind, a lot went to Israel. Now, how people always give you this thing that the land was stolen from the Palestinians. No, it wasn't. I mean, in 1882, the land belonged to the Ottoman Turks. The Ottoman Turks were a Muslim Turkish empire. They're not going to let Jews from Europe come and forcibly take land from Palestinians. How did the Jews get the land? They bought the land. Okay? If I buy a car from you, you can't the next day call the police and say I stole it. If I paid you a fair price, then I paid you a fair price. Now, what land did they buy? They bought the shit land. What do I mean by shit land? There's a saying that the first settlers that we know to this day, it's called chol vebitzot. What does chol vebitzot mean? Chol means sand, bitzot means swamp. The Jews bought the land. The Arabs were, subsistent farmers. There was swamp. Swamp was in the area north of Lake Kinneret. You know it also as the Sea of Galilee. And the sand was along the coast. The Arabs didn't live there. What did the Jews do? They drained the swamp, and it became very good farmland. In fact, it's the best farmland in Israel till this day. The sand, they grew oranges. It was the late 19th century. The world was changing. You can grow oranges in Israel and export it to Europe. I don't know if you've seen Jaffa oranges. Have you heard of that? Have you ever seen those oranges?
Not yet, no. One day we'll have some together, though.
Okay. Say that again?
I said one day we'll have some together.
Okay.
That'll be cool.
I remember growing up in Canada, I saw it. They have it in the East Coast. Here in California, of course, they're not going to do it because we grow our own. So I haven't seen it here. But I don't know if on the East Coast they have, or you'll see oranges and you see a label on them that says Jaffa. I don't know if you have that there still. In any case, the Jews developed the land, all right? And there weren't that many, from 1882 to 1917, there weren't that many. There was, I think, like someone chronicled about 8 or 9 deaths of Jews for political reasons.
Okay.
Right? That would change big time because what happens in 1917? The British took over. And the British, wherever they took over, they had a policy divide and conquer. You look at India. India, Muslims and Hindus were living together for 1,000 years. The British get there, and today India and Pakistan are pointing nuclear weapons at one another. All right. So in 1920, I'll give you an example. One of the greatest leader of the Palestinians of all, bigger than Yasser Arafat, who was actually Egyptian, but was Amin al-Husseini. Amin al-Husseini was arrested in 1920 because of riots. There were Jewish versus Arab riots. The Jews blamed the Arabs blamed the Jews. He was arrested, tried, sentenced to jail for 10 years. The British High Commissioner took him out of jail and made him the Mufti of Jerusalem. Mufti of Jerusalem is the guy who handles the religious side. So he gave him a position. The whole idea was to get the Jews and the Arabs at each other's throats, and that's where they're at till this day. I mean, if you look at before that, there are letters from Arab leaders saying to the Jews of Europe, please come, we welcome our Jewish brothers back, all right? They were family. I mean, in fact, when you look at DNA, the Jewish DNA and Palestinian DNA is very similar.
Now, when you look at them, right, you cannot tell the difference. If you ask average Americans to, like, you throw up a Jewish person, Israeli, and a Palestinian next to each other, you can't tell the difference.
No, you can't. Now, the Palestinians will never admit to this, but that's how it is. Now, understand how the Arab world works. The Arab world, you have a bunch of countries, but they're not really countries. Well, with the exception of Egypt and the exception of the Emirates, and I'll explain to you the Emirates in a second. How the Arab world works is you have this huge Arab world from Iraq all the way to Morocco, but it's not countries, it's these small clans, right? Yeah. And they stick together, they marry one another. They don't marry outside the clan. In fact, Arabs, something they do is they marry their own cousins, but that's to stay within the clan. I know that sounds very strange to us, but they do that. But so, like Arabs, for example, you hear the Palestinians, no such thing as a Palestinian people. The clans in Gaza don't marry clans in Hebron or in Jenin. They all stick together. They all stick within itself. And the clans, when you see what's going on in Syria today, or in Iraq, or Yemen, or Libya, why? Because these aren't real countries. These are different clans fighting one another. Okay, so the good is the Emirates, and the reason the Emirates is good and stable is because there are these little kingdoms that are the clans themselves. Sure. So the clans are stable. Now, what happened in the narrative used to be that the Arabs have 21 countries, the Jews have one country, and the Arabs want to take that one Jewish country. So in the 1960s, and I want to say, if I send you an article, it's about 20 pages long. Will you read it? Okay. Well, no, I'm asking. I won't bother sending. I could put it in the comments section too. And this is going to sound crazy to you, and it did to me in the beginning of it. And I read it, and the guy was so well referenced. I was amazed how. And it starts how in the 1960s the Soviet Union allied itself with the Arabs, right? Whereas Israel allied itself with the West. So what they did is the KGB literally invented like the PLO and the Palestinians. They turned it around where the Palestinians were now the victims, right? Instead of saying, oh, the Arabs from 21 countries want to take one Jewish country, now they turned the Palestinians into the Jews of sorts. Now, in Europe, this was welcomed because Europeans, this was eased their consciousness that, oh, well, you guys are just as bad as us. We're not going to worry about what we did to you. In fact, there was a poll in Germany a few years ago saying, but 42% of Germans believe that what the Israelis are doing to the Palestinians is equivalent to what the Germans did to the Jews. Think how insane that is. But that's what people believe because that's what they want to believe. So then came the PLO, which is a total foreign entity. You have Hamas. Hamas is tied to the Egyptian Muslim Brotherhood. And these are just criminal organizations. When I say criminal organization, I'm not even talking about terrorism. They've embezzled, like they've estimated that the Palestinians have received 25 times per capita what the Europeans received during the Marshall Plan. You're familiar with the Marshall Plan?
Well, already, like to this point, I already have like a number of disagreements, and actually they're starting to pile up. I'm going to let you keep
go
going,
ahead.
but I feel like at some point, right, there's going to be like a critical mass of like, differences which really have to be addressed at some point. So first of all, I hear your your argument that the Jews bought a lot of the land in the area, and I could see that happening, right? Yeah, actually, China's buying lots of land in the United States and in Canada. They're buying actually large amounts of land in France as well. It is an open market to a certain extent, and you're right. If they bought the land, they have a right to protect it, right? Yeah. But then we also look at the community. They have a right to protect themselves to a certain amount from gentrification. And I look at what happened in Korea as well, you know what I mean? And if you take a look at, right, the land was originally, according to the storyline, the Jews, right? Yeah. And then it was kind of like went away, right? There was some problems where they were forced to move off of it, right? And then now they're just who knows where that homeland is, but anybody has a right to go anywhere they want and claim it as their homeland and set up there and not be pushed off it. You know what I mean? So they have a right as frontiersmen in that area to push for theirs, but also the people who already were there, whether they're called Palestinians, whatever they're called, right? They have a right to also try to maintain their own culture and what's going on there. So there may have been overstepping on both sides. And another thing is that I feel what you're saying as, so there is a certain amount of extreme gentrification that looks like it's happening possibly within those communities, right? These communities may not have been able to drain their swamp and all this other kind of thing. Also, the fact of the matter is that while we take if we take a look at BDS itself, it's actually considered to be, sanctioning can be violent because people can starve and they can go into that, right? But Israelis actually have a very strong, right? Yeah, trade. They have they're producing a lot of goods. It's really not so much punching down like on North Korea. Those people are literally starving to death, right? We're still sanctioning them, killing them, right? So the thing is that it's still pretty much nonviolent protest. You know what I mean? And I find it, if people, right, I can see it from your side, but I think that people have a right to say, I don't want to buy, or, I think that the government, if their small community says, we don't want to buy, what was that, Wix or Waze or something, but Waze is a good product. I know a lot of Israelis who make good quality products. They're friends of mine. They work in technology. They're great. They're smart people. But the thing is, if someone has an ideological reason, whether they're right or wrong, they have a right to say, I don't want to mess with Waze.
Right. Okay. Oh, they do. They do. No, I'm not saying that. Now, can I add a few points that I actually I thought of? I forgot to tell you.
Because the government is outlawing BDS in many instances. Just straight up outlawing BDS. Go ahead.
Let me get to BDS in a second. Let me make a point about something else that I've neglected. In 1948, there were approximately 1.2 million Arabs living in what was then British Mandate Palestine. Today, there are about 5 million, right? That's a quadruple. That's more than quadruple, right? Now, at the same time, there were about 1 million Jews living in Arab countries. My grandfather came from Iraq. My mother came from Iraq. My grandfather was a prosperous merchant in Iraq. When he left, he was forced out. He had nothing. He had the shirt on his back when he made it to Israel. Nothing, right? Today, there are fewer than 5,000 Jews in the Arab world, all right? So when you hear this Palestinian refugees, that's not the real refugees. The real refugees are the Jews of the Arab world. They're the ones who got screwed. Someone did an estimate of the land that was stolen from them. See, their land was not bought. It was taken.
I could see that happening too. Yeah.
Yeah. So people ignore that part of it. And someone estimated that the land that the Jews in the Arab world owned is about 4 times the size of Israel, because Israel is very small when you look at it, right? They lost everything. They lost their property. And no one talks about it. In fact, when you look at the fake far left, they'll tell you that the Palestinians are being ethnically cleansed. Is that what happens when you're ethnically cleansed? Your population quadruples? Or is it when it goes from 1 million to 5,000? Is that the real ethnic cleansing? See, they've taken this whole topic and turn it on its head. They never tell you about the Jews of the Arab world, who are the real refugees in the Middle East, in my opinion. Now, getting back to BDS. Okay, fine. Everyone's allowed to do what they want to do. My question is, why? What are you trying to accomplish with BDS?
Yeah, generally, I'm against sanctions. Generally, just in general. But
tell me what the point is to this movement.
The point is to put political pressure financially on that.
To do what? To do what?
To put political pressure to show that they do not support the state of Israel, and they want to, support
What
Palestine.
is the end? What end goal are you trying to accomplish? Let me ask you.
There's different people will have different goals, you know what I mean, who are doing it. But I think the overall thing is to just to show displeasure with Israel primarily
Displeasure
for
at
Palestinian reasons.
displeasure for what? What are you displeased at? Tell me.
I think people are displeased with what they perceive as treatment of Palestinians. They are
Okay.
perceived with the violence. They're unhappy with armed forces, and
Okay.
people
Let's
get yeah.
discuss that.
Okay.
Let's discuss that. Okay. First of all, where does the violence start? A lot of it is you talk about the violence. Let's remember the Palestinian Authority. Like if you're a Palestinian, you're a suicide bomber and you go kill yourself and you blow up 20 Israelis, the Palestinian Authority will compensate your family. Your family will be taken care of. Now, think about that. There are people who commit suicide every day. If you're a Palestinian, why would you commit suicide in your room? Why not just go blow yourself up and at least your family is taken care of? Okay, let's talk about the real violence. Now, when you have like checkpoints where Israel stops them, Israel has taken those down, right? When they take them down, within a week and a half, there's like 20 bombings. Why do they do the bombing? The bombing is on purpose. Like I said, Hamas and the PA are criminal organizations that have embezzled billions of dollars from their own people. It is in their interest to keep up the fight, right? If they make peace with Israel, people will stop giving them money. Right? There's people in the Hamas that it's an estimated they've embezzled 2.5 billion with a B each. They're not stealing millions; they're stealing billions. Okay, that's where the money goes. That's why when you think about it, why would Hamas fire a rocket into Israel? They fire a rocket into Israel. They know A, that Israel will retaliate. B, that Israel has better. Okay, first, A, Israel has a missile defense shield. B, Israel will retaliate. And C, Israel has better missiles. Why do they do it? Well, they do it because once Israel retaliates, they say, oh, look what the Israelis are doing to us. Help us. Help us means send us money. And that money ends up in their Swiss bank accounts. That's what this is. We have to see through the BS here. This is not what you think, that these are innocent people. Palestinians inside Israel are loyal Israeli citizens, right? Why is that? Palestinians in East Jerusalem, now they have what is called a blue card, which means they're allowed to work in Israel. On the West Bank, what do you think they want? That's what they want. They don't want, they'd rather be able to just work inside Israel and live, you talk about freedom for the Palestinians, freedom to live under a dictatorship. Is that real freedom?
It's hard for me to. Okay, so the thing is that, right? I feel what you're saying, but
Okay.
here's some of the things that really kind of like make it difficult for me to really get on board. One of the
Sure.
things is that we take a look at like nowadays, like the way that China, right? Yeah, they make the U.S. censor a lot of their own stuff, and we could see
Right.
that sometimes there's other nations, and it's their right, and you got to give them props for just having the juice to go out and make things happen in the United States. You look at Israel, and they have a lot of juice. Okay, they're palling around with the top politicians. And you got to give them respect for that. But then also it seems kind of weird the way that their issues are addressed and handled by the top, which it seems like it's to be very favorable for, Israel, and openly so, where they literally will legalize, right? Yeah, BDS when they are literally sanctioning other countries in real life. Another thing is that like I told you that I actually have like multiple stories about Jewish people. And
Okay.
I could share one of the best ones about it, and I'll share that on another video. You know what I mean? Because honestly,
Yeah, go ahead.
well, I don't want to spend all my time like seem like telling nice stories. I want to get right to the freaking nitty gritty.
Sure,
You know what I mean?
sure.
Yeah. So
Okay.
let's not pretend to be nice about it, okay? But the thing is
Okay.
that right, the thing is that honestly, Jewish people I feel like have really let us down. Really strongly, yeah. I look at the struggles that Jewish people went through in academia, right, as in terms of the way that they were discriminated against and kept from getting scholarships and stuff like that. They went through a really hard struggle, and now us Asian Americans are going through the same struggle, but we're getting no help. I would really, right, and when I've been in high level classrooms, stuff like that, and just the way Asians are there in force, Jews are there in force, you know what I mean? And Nigerians are there in force, and I know and the Russians are there in force, you know what I mean? And the Jews are there, and we're with you working side by side. You guys know what's happening to us is wrong. You know what I mean? And you guys could really help us out more. And there are some out there, like props out to JFREJ, right? Jews for Racial Economics and Justice. Y'all are hardcore, and they actually do a lot of pro-Palestinian stuff. So there are people who I work with who are actually on both sides of it, but you've brought up some really good points today. And I think that, you know, the land that the Jews lost, Jewish people in Arab countries were discriminated against. I have no doubt about that. And I bet you they were, you know, encouraged to leave in maybe not so nice ways. And I can see them losing land, and that's a legit, you know, issue right there. So we got to look at all the sides of it, and I'm so glad you came on today. But when, you know, if it already seems like they have like the ear of the people who matter, you know, I mean, it seems like they're shoveling the money to those people, and it seems like they're going to take care of their problems, but they don't really, when we need them, where are they going to be at? They talk about things like, you know, never forget the Holocaust. What's going on to like my people dying in freaking North Korea, starving to death, you know, under the dictatorship of the CIA running so that the U.S. can have their military. Can you fucking help us, please? You know what I mean? Like, I got, you know what I mean? I get your back, but are we just in this alone? That's how I feel,
Okay.
man. Yeah, go ahead.
You know, let me address that in a few things here. I want to say, first, people talk about how powerful the Israel lobby is and all that. If I would, right? You know, how powerful is the Israel lobby? If you were to take a guess how much money is spent by lobbying groups, where does the Israel lobby rank? Take a guess. Is it first, second, in the top 5, top 10? Where would you guess it ranks?
You know, also Israel has a badass special military forces.
No.
So
Please
maybe
answer my question.
I don't know. I don't know. But I know that there's a lot of other things going on besides the money. You know what I mean? I know Israeli forces come over to train New York City cops. I know there's a lot of other relationships going on besides the money.
No, listen,
for real.
Listen.
And Israeli special forces are the baddest ass in the world. And I know they go out and do a lot of military ops, and they're the top motherfuckers. Israeli motherfuckers, you cannot fuck with them. They're for real.
Okay. Well, believe it or not, I was once in the Israeli army. I weighed about 100 pounds less than I do today. But we won't. You know, the Israeli lobby is the 50th biggest lobby as far as spending. The accountants lobby is like 47. So a lot of it is a myth. A lot of it is these Jewish tropes that Jews are so powerful. So
wasn't the accountant lobby the one that almost destroyed the United States? Freaking wasn't? Didn't accounting almost destroy the United States? Didn't that cause the? What was the name of that company again? That accounting is fucking huge, bro.
Okay.
Lehman Brothers or what the fuck they were?
Okay, hold on. Let me see. You remember when Ilhan Omar said it's all about the Benjamins? You remember when she said that?
No.
She was talking about.
But okay, I believe it.
Okay, and then she said, "Oh, I'm not talking about the Jews. I'm talking about the Israel lobby." Well, the Israel lobby, like I said, is 50th biggest. The biggest lobbying group is the Securities and Investment Lobby. They spend about 26 times the Israel lobby. Guess who takes money from the Securities Investment? Ilhan Omar.
Okay.
Right? So she takes for the biggest, but she done that. Second, I want to talk to you were talking about with China and the power and all that. You always hear about the Israel lobby. This is a Jewish trope. It's not that powerful. I never even heard about China.
They're right to do it, though. They're right to do it.
No.
They should do that.
But it's not as powerful as you think. Israel, the money that Israel takes from the United States, 99.5% of that is military. So basically, the United States builds weapons here, and they give it to Israel. And a lot of that doesn't even go to Israel. It goes to third parties. It's just that they channel it through Israel. So because they're not allowed to give money, to give weapons to, like, let's say, the Kurds.
But it's what I see in my real life. Like, Andrew Cuomo comes out and says BDS should be illegalized. Like, I've seen him say this. Grace Mann I do saying these things. Andrew Yang saying these things. I'm like, damn.
Okay. I don't think they should say that because they give it credibility in that way, which is probably what they want to do. You know, understand, these politicians, Andrew Cuomo, he's in New York, so he's just saying it to help because he wants the Jews to vote for him. Just like Rashid is saying she's for BDS, meanwhile she uses Wix, right? These politicians are not to be trusted. These politicians are bullshitters. And I liked how you confronted Yang. You should. This is what I would have said to Yang. I was thinking about it because Yang had said that they asked him who broke your heart. He said it was Obama. You should have told him you're the one who broke my heart.
Damn.
You know, that fucker. I mean, why doesn't he do a third party? And third, you're saying that Jews should be more supportive of North Korea, and I agree with that. But you have to realize,
not North Korea. I mean Asian Americans, like because
Asian
right,
Americans,
yeah, because not the North
yeah,
Korean
yeah.
state, right? Maybe North Korean people. I'm not really
The
about
people,
these leaders, you know what I mean?
exactly,
Yeah, but you know,
exactly.
yeah,
What
they're
I'm
going,
saying,
yeah,
I agree.
exactly, not, yeah,
I mean, I don't give a shit.
yeah,
About
whatever
that.
that guy, exactly,
Yeah.
yeah, whoever, yeah.
Yeah. So, but I don't know. I hope you didn't see my last video.
It's all good, man. I still got love for you
Yeah,
either
my
way,
last
right?
video,
Yeah.
I was talking about that guy who shot up the massage parlors.
Oh, okay. What about him?
And I said that I didn't see that as a hate crime as much as I saw it as a crazy person with a gun. A crazy person should receive health care, mental health care. Not in America, we give them guns. So I'm not saying there isn't racism. I'm not that naive. I mean, I'm a minority myself. Obviously, there's bigotry and racism.
There's this there's also another racist trope that goes on around that says that, that the media won't talk about. They get so much wrong, you know what I mean? And you brought up, let's keep this about Israel, you know what I mean? But the one thing I'll say about that is there's a lot of issues that the media is misrepresenting. This Asian American thing that you guys see nowadays, what the media is presenting to you is so bullshit. It's so bullshit, yeah? There's little elements here where it's cool, but honestly, most of it is just, I look at them like, what the fuck are these people talking about? So now, the thing is that the media often portrays this in a certain way. How do you feel about the media coverage has been about like these particular events or what's going on with us?
From what I've heard, I think there's a lot of language being thrown around that kind of dilutes the value of,
they never get it right, do they?
No.
They never do. Whatever the media's telling you about the Asian American thing.
No. The media's job is to divide us. They love racism because racism divides people. They want it to be like this: white people who make up about half the population and minorities who make up the other half. As long as we're fighting each other, we're not fighting them. All right? That's not the truth. Is it's between us, the 99.9% of people, and the billionaires who own this country and do what they want. So that's the real struggle.
So with the Jewish people, right? If the Jewish people who nowadays have started to get big positions in academia, things like that, you know what I mean? And if they could use that to help us, Asian Americans, in the struggle, you know what I mean, who are going through a very similar struggle to the ones that the Jews went through, right? Yeah. If y'all could stand up for us, then I would feel a lot more comfortable in standing up with the Jews. But I'm like, well, if they're gonna just take what they can and just run away with it and not help us, then why the fuck should I even help them?
Who are you talking about specifically?
I would like to see the Jewish community help out more Asian Americans because a lot of the discrimination that Jews went is the exact same thing that Asian Americans are going through, with the exact same discrimination in the same fields. Help us, please. Yeah.
It's not an organized Jewish community. It's not like, a Jewish community doesn't exist. I mean, when I was growing up, at least back then, people used to go to synagogue. Jews don't even go to synagogue anymore. You go to synagogues, they're empty, right?
Yeah.
So it's only, and the people who are there are like 80 years old. Remember when the guy shot up that synagogue?
Yeah.
People like 80, 90 years old, right? There's no Jewish community anymore. It's just, it doesn't exist.
Okay.
I mean, there's no organized. I mean, there is a little bit here and there, but and one last thing I want to say about the weapons sales to Israel. See, the United States always says they're for peace in the Middle East.
I'll take some responsibility on it too. You know what I mean? I'll do some more reaching out. Like I said, I have some friends like Jay Fredge, Jews for Racial Economics Justice here in New York. It's been a while since I've talked to them. I need to reach. I love them. Back in the day, we did some good work together. I would like to holler at them again. But yeah, now I know that those Jews do not maybe share the same exact views that you do, right? Yeah.
No.
But yeah,
because a lot of people, I hate when people do this. They say, "Oh, I'm Jewish, and therefore I can criticize Israel." Well, you're Jewish, and you have shit for brains. Don't talk. It bothers me that most people who talk about it, don't understand it, and then other people like Jimmy Dore worked for RT, These people are trying to sabotage the left. They're trying to label the left as anti-Semites the way it happened in Britain with James
I know the story.
Hogan.
They're going to choose the Jews that fit their narrative. They're going to choose the Jews that are bourgeoisie, that share their values. They're going to pick a certain, right? Yeah, so I know how it goes. That makes a lot of sense. You brought up some really valid points today. I'm still haven't been convinced to really. You did actually remind some of these points I've forgotten. You know what I mean? I am aware of some of the points, and it really helped me to bring me back more into balance. I do feel like BDS is something that still should not be legalized. I still think that it's something that still is fair to support. But
it's
you
I view it
raise
as
real valid
anti-Semitic.
issues. Yeah.
I view it as anti-Semitic because it targets Israel, targets the only Jewish state. Just like I view it anti-Semitic that the Jewish embassy. Everyone got upset when Trump moved the Jewish embassy to Jerusalem. Well, why is that? I mean, if Israel says that's the capital, that's the capital. I mean, we wouldn't put the American embassy in Toronto. We'd put it in Ottawa, right?
So when we have sanctions against Iran, like, is that like racist against Iranians? I mean, like, where does it go, really? You know what I mean?
We shouldn't have sanctions. We shouldn't never have sanctions against anybody because sanctions hurt the poor people and not the people that you claim.
Hell yes, I agree with that. Yeah, that's not really cool. Yeah, what up?
So this is and the BDS movement, to me, I see it as anti-Semitic because it targets Israel when you have, like 150 countries worse than Israel. I mean, if you really want to learn about this, if you want to take an hour, Google Alan Dershowitz, Cornel West debate. They debated in Harvard, all right? And if you really want to learn about this topic, they had a very good debate. If you want to spend an hour and learn it, it's good. If you want to learn, I'll be happy to email you that thing about the KGB and Zionism, but maybe you don't want to read. But the funny thing about it is I actually emailed the guy who wrote it, and to my surprise, he got back to me like in 5 minutes, and he explained to me, and he told me about other things I was not aware of, like what is he called Pallywood. Pallywood is like Palestinian Hollywood, where a lot of, I don't know if you remember, but 10 years ago there was a scene in Israeli soldiers shooting, and this little kid, this 4-year-old kid, and his dad, and the Israelis killed him. And then they showed the whole footage that after they killed him, you see the kid waving at them, right? It was all staged, all right? Okay. So a lot of the stuff there you see is staged. People don't realize this stuff, that it's become an industry unto itself. And to me, and anyone wants to debate me on this, to me, the Palestinian issue today, you know what I think of it? I think it's a money-making scam. That's all I see it. And the wrong people are getting rich off this thing.
I can see people grifting off it. I can see that developing.
Big time.
Okay, so thank you for addressing that. There's actually something else that I want to ask you about, but it's just actually floated from my mind at the moment. It was really, it was quite dominant for a second, yeah? So let's take a look at, so as in terms of this whole Israel thing, you said that it could be considered racist. So can you maybe support an alternate solution for people who want to, who still are unhappy about the situation over there? How can they maybe do something and feel better about themselves in a way that maybe might not hurt, a community that they might not be intending to, penalize?
Okay. First of all, and by the way, if that idea comes to your head, just don't interrupt me. That's okay. All right. First of all, my first suggestion to everybody is before you take a strong position on this, study it. I request that you study it. This is and you're dealing with very sensitive people because Jews are a minority who've been through a lot of shit. So a lot of the time you'll be accused of being anti-Semitic because you have to understand the sensitivity of Jews, that you're singling out Israel. That's number one. So study the issue very well, okay? I bet you most people didn't even know that there were 1 million Jews in Arab countries and they lost everything and they became refugees. Yeah,
I do remember that, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, a lot of people don't know that.
So okay. So I do remember, and I'll actually tell you now. So remember before I was going to tell you a story about the Jewish people that was positive? And actually, I'm not going to tell that story now. You have to tune into another video to see that one, right? But actually, that person is from the Hasidic community. So you may know, now Hasidics actually, as you may have heard, or maybe it's a falsity, that they face some discrimination over in Israel. And there also is actually, I think that there was also said to be another, besides the Palestinians, there's another minority group that actually has a large presence in the Israeli armed forces. Do you know who I'm talking about?
Druze, D-R-U-S-E or Z-E.
Yeah. So maybe actually I'd like to get a little bit more understanding of the Hasidic position, right? And I could tell you my understanding of that, but I want to hear from you. And also the Druze and that their position in this whole Israel world, because I've always been interested. What's going on over there? Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. First, I'm not the expert. I haven't lived there in over 30 years. So I really don't know that much about the Hasidic. The thing I do know about the Hasidic, and one is many Israelis, and I'll include myself in this, and take this as you will, view them as leeches. And what do I mean by
Ooh,
that?
damn. Okay.
I know. In Israel, because one, they don't have to do the army, which to me is, they don't have to do that. They get a lot of government subsidies. A lot of the men don't work. They spend their time.
They're good at doing this shit in New York City too. I'm not hating. I got love for them, but they know how to really juice the system. They are fucking masters of that shit. Yeah. I'm not hating. That's a skill. That's a fucking skill. Go ahead. Yeah.
To me, I'm not cool with that. At least,
I get that too.
At least do the army. At least defend the country. And what I hate most is what they'll do is so many of those who live in New York City are also Israeli citizens. And
oh man. Now I'm gonna have to tell the story. Because the story is about how Jewish people are some of the best people in the world, and it's this Hasidic guy. But go ahead. Yeah.
Okay. And they fly in, they vote in the Israeli elections. The reason the religious people have so much power is because they vote in a block.
That's kind of badass, though. You gotta give them respect. Yeah, like damn.
It's badass, but it explains why people are upset at them. Explains why I'm not happy with it.
Okay. There's another reason though, right? What's their position on Israel?
Oh no! You're talking about the extreme ones. There are most Hasidic are pro-Israel.
Okay.
Most Hasidic are pro-Israel. There are those extreme ones who believe that Jews have to wait till the Messiah comes, and therefore Israel. But those are very few.
Okay. What is the Jews' position on that whole
the Jews
on the Israeli state? And why do they support the Israeli state when they're minorities? Technically, maybe Palestinians. What's the story there? Go ahead.
Okay. Let me explain the story to the best of my knowledge, and I'm not going to claim to be an expert. Who are the Druze? The Druze are they're a sect of Islam, right? But they were considered heretics. So what happened? This happened about 1,000 years ago. That whoever was in charge, the Sultan or whoever, made a deal with the Druze, and the deal went like this: you cannot recruit new people, and in turn, we will no longer persecute you. All right. So the Druze started marrying within, and they became a people of their own. Now there are Druze in Israel, there are Druze in Syria and Lebanon, all over, and wherever they are loyal to the country. So the Druze, when Israel was first formed, there were Druze living there, and they said, well, we want to be equal to everybody else. And part of that means we want to serve the country, meaning the Druze do not volunteer to the Israeli army. They are conscripted. The men, I didn't know that. I know that there's some at the top, though. They're forced to be in that. Okay, I didn't know that. They're conscripted because their community came as a whole and said, we're going to be conscripted. Not the women. I don't think the women, just the men.
But they're some of the best soldiers, aren't they?
Oh, yeah. They're very good soldiers, yeah. And they have their own units. There's like a Druze paratrooper units. And in fact, Israel, when Israel was in Lebanon, there are Druze in Lebanon. So Israel put Israel and the Druze in Lebanon were on opposite sides. So Israel would put the Druze soldiers there so they wouldn't fight the Israelis, right? Mm-hmm. So, yeah. So they're loyal. Is there racism? Is there prejudice? Yeah, of course. There's prejudice everywhere. There's racism everywhere.
So if the Druze can work it out with Israel, why can't the Palestinians kind of work it out with Israel? What's going on there?
I'm gonna get back to what I'm saying. It's money. It's not the Palestinian people, right?
I could see that for real. Yeah, for real.
And it's not the Israel. If you took the Palestinian people and Israeli people, there would be no problem. It's the leadership, right?
Exactly.
And this is, again, why I call it the fake far left. Because think about it. As leftists, we never pick a side in the nationalist conflict. To leftists, we're always on the side of the people, whether it's the Israeli people, the Palestinian people, against the rich, right? Like I said, I served I served in Israeli army. I was in a infantry unit.
Let me tell you why I could see this happening, right? Yeah? Because the thing is that in North Korea, South Korea, one day some freaking American and Russian guy came in there and said, we're going to draw this line, and just because if your cousin lives south of that river, fuck it, that's your enemy now. And I could see right just before you said it was like Israeli and Palestinians, I didn't know they were working day to day together, but I could see that, right? I have this Palestinian woman, right? Should we come over, we hang out, we play video games, who knows, you know what I mean? Yeah? Or, you know, like my brother, right? You live real close to each other, you're going to hang out every day, and all of a sudden the leaders have some bullshit to say, and all of a sudden we're supposed to be at war. That's inconvenient for me. What the fuck? You know, that makes so much sense to me.
Yeah. In fact, I'll tell you, a guy conducted a few months ago an opinion poll in Arab countries, and needless to say, they had an unfavorable opinion of Israel. It was higher than the favorable. So guess which place? This place, they still had an unfavorable opinion of Israel, but guess which place had the lowest unfavorability, highest favorability? You want to guess where? It was the West Bank, right?
Yeah.
The Morocco, which is as far as you can get away in the Arab world from Israel, had the highest unfavorability of Israel and the lowest favorability. So the people who see the Israelis, who live with them, and remember, the West Bank is not even as much as the Palestinians or the Israeli Arabs just live there, and they're, you know, they speak Hebrew, they're part of the country, and you know, they're fine with it. They don't have a problem. I tell you, it's just the leadership. One really good YouTube channel, if you want to learn about this, it's called Ask an Israeli, Ask a Palestinian. It's this guy, he's originally from Canada. He's been there 20 years. And he goes, people send him questions, and he'll go to Palestinians and he asks them questions, go to Israelis. And it's good to watch a bunch of videos. Also, I like reading the comments. So if you watch that video, you'll learn a lot about the channel. You'll learn a lot about this. You'll get ordinary people and what they think.
Okay. So one thing that you said that let's actually get to the issue that we actually had a disagreement in. When I went to Yang, I was like, you support Israel, so that means he's just actually going to follow the money.
Right.
Okay. So and I guess like I could see that actually from what you said earlier, right? Yeah, the whole anti-Israel thing, right, being actually a part of a larger, in the larger framework, right? In the context of Israel being pushed as an anti-Jewish thing and part of that possibly misled idea. But for me, I really saw it more as resistance against the, like, what I saw as the lobbying, right? Maybe you could say that I bought into that to a certain extent, and I could see that. So I'm trying to think of a way that I can really address the addition properly, because I do feel, right, I want to make sure that your needs are addressed because you're my homie, you know what I mean? I appreciate you coming on my time, and I hear what you're saying, right? Yeah, so if I got to change maybe a little bit, maybe not, or maybe my understanding, so how can I address the situation? Because I do feel like Yang is consistently making these moves, and you also said that you felt like it was wrong for these politicians to get involved, like Grace Meng, right? Yeah, she's very pro-Israel. She's also like trying to get rid of BDS, like, just censor it, like right out, just like Andrew Cuomo or a lot of these Dem establishments. And I can't be mad at Israel for having, right? Yeah, for asking for that, you know what I mean? But it makes things look weird and bad. You get what I mean?
Right. With Yang, I have no respect for Yang or any of these politicians or Cuomo or any of them. Like I said, Yang, think about if you were in Yang's shoes and he wanted to run his third party, he could change this country forever. Anybody like that, anybody in a position, but I guarantee you that's why he was there in the first place. If it was someone they didn't trust, they would never have let him on that stage.
I think that Israeli people have a right to be there. Anybody has a right to be anywhere they want. So I don't think I don't want it to come off like I'm anti-Israel or anything like that, right?
No,
but I'm also not anti. Yeah, I get what you're saying about Palestinian people, but whoever was there, I also, right, whether they're called Palestinians or not, like I know that's a point of contention, but I also support them too because I've also experienced, right. I feel like that's happening a lot to our country, right? Chinese are buying a lot of property, and I feel like Koreans actually. We were actually gentrified and just got fucked.
Right.
You know.
Well, let me tell you one thing. Is even today with all the people and all the settlers and all that crap, guess what? There's room for everybody.
Yeah.
There's room for everybody. So it's not like you think that, they stole our land and this shit. No. We don't live in a world where everybody's farming. Nobody's farming today. Everybody lives most people are urbanized, right?
Yeah.
So there's plenty of room for both the Israelis and the Palestinians. So to say this, that they stole our land, it's nonsense. And a lot of what you hear about the Palestinians, and for example, you'll hear about Gaza.
As far as I'm concerned, a lot of that is jealousy, because Jews are fucking good at what they do, and they're fucking badasses.
A lot of it is lies too, because you'll hear that Gaza is so much poverty and all that. Well, you know what? They'll say Gaza is unlivable. Well, you know what the average life expectancy is in the world as a whole? It's 70.5. You know what it is in Gaza? It's, I think, 74. So are you telling me that the majority of the world is unlivable? I mean, they have a longer lifespan, higher education, higher, lower infant mortality rate. All those are inconsistent with a place that's poor.
I don't believe anything. I don't believe the numbers. I gotta see it, or someone was there. They got some pictures. I'll take a look at that, but I don't believe nothing.
I'll send you a few things that
Appreciate it.
Okay. And so it's like I said, it's good that you don't believe, and I appreciate you giving me a chance, because you'll never see anybody pro-Israeli on any of those other channels. Never.
Well, I think you brought up some really good points once again. I'm sorry I forgot about those things, right? And injustice anywhere is a justice everywhere. You know what I mean? And
that's true.
Yeah. So what up, man?
But remember, on the left, we always support the people. We don't pick sides. We don't say one group or another.
It's a dark day in our nation when high-level authorities will seek to use every method to silence dissent. The truth must be told.
And if you want the truth, you need to check out independent media producers just like myself, DJ L7. You should subscribe and hit the bell icon to get notifications when I release a new video.
Truth of these
we
words
are on all
is beyond
the
doubt.
That includes Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and of course YouTube. Unfortunately, we have definitely seen that these mainstream outlets will cave to corporate interests, so we encourage you to join our independently moderated communities of Reddit and Discord. We also encourage you to subscribe to us on BitChute and Daily Motion so you can see the content that YouTube doesn't want us to let you see. Hey, now it's time for the most important part of the video. That's right. It's time for us to tell you about the Taking Action Group. Do you need an activist? Or maybe there's no activists around willing to help you with your cause and you need to learn to become an activist. That's exactly why we're here. Every week we get out with people from across the nation, in fact even sometimes internationally, and we develop strategies and a game plan to address the issues that are affecting all of us. Every week myself from New York City and of course my co-host Lisa from Los Angeles provide a coast-to-coast perspective on what's going on in the country. If you want to donate to help out with expenses, travel, equipment, stuff like that, then I definitely appreciate it, and you can hit us off at Venmo or PayPal. Thanks a lot. Hey, by the way, we also have a merch store, so check it out. Oh my goodness, it seems like you've reached the end of the video, so make sure you check out some of our other videos, make sure you subscribe. This is your last chance to do so thanks a lot, and looking forward to seeing you on the next one. Hope you guys enjoyed. Please comment below if you have any questions or issues you'd like me to address. And if you're an activist, the time to make things happen is now.